Now, as I said, it was a bit tricky finding some good news today. But there's a story about the statue of Margaret Thatcher being egged in an act which some would call a gross act of vandalism. And it might not on the surface be what everyone calls good news. Now, this statue was going to be put up in London, but it was instead moved to her hometown of Grantham in Lincolnshire on the grounds that it was less likely to be targeted by left-wing mob there, who obviously they've taken again statues recently. But within 20 minutes of it being installed, it went up at 9:34. At 9:55, bloke turns up with half a dozen free range and starts chucking eggs at it and lob them at what is now known as the Bronze Lady. But Dan, I suppose perhaps from the government's point of view, this is a bit of good news, because after so many years of the culture wars and complaining about statues and cancellations and so on, at least they've stopped tearing the statues down and making them go for a swim. I mean, eggs are better, aren't they?
You're right. We have gone on a bit of a reach for good news today, but also it's only been 24 hours. I mean...
She could yet do the breaststroke. Is that what you're suggesting? There are some rivers in Grantham.
No, not. I mean, the reason why we're hesitant to call it good news, obviously, is because, you know, there's been a tide of abuse in politics and all the rest of it. On the other hand, it's been quite, in some ways, quite a light-hearted story the last few years, because they have been talking about this statue for ages, and they've had to put it on a 10-foot plinth to stop people vandalising it. And, you know, there were also, I think they've got CCTV and all the rest of it on it. So they are desperately trying not
Well, he doesn't care. Look, he's out there, out and proud.
No, quite.
He's like, yeah, whatever, I'm chucking an egg at a statue. What are you going to do?
And you might say, you know, there are communities around Grantham that were damaged by those policies in the 1980s. And you might say that you're not throwing an egg at a person. This isn't abuse in politics. This is free speech. But it depends on your view of those things, doesn't it? I mean, yeah, we'd originally heard about this a couple of days before it was unveiled. We were trying to stand it up, and we had one tip-off that they were going to try and unveil it in the small hours of the morning. Not unveil it, but put it in place so that this sort of thing didn't happen. It seems that didn't come to pass, and they did it after sunrise, but there we go. It's just, we'll see how it goes, won't we? But perhaps it will be their chance to fuel the culture wars a little bit more if something worse happens to the statue, if someone tries to do something really horrible to it, because the government will then come back and say, you know, this is the free speech of the attacking of the statue is actually criminal damage, and, you know, is curtailing the free speech of having the statue up, which is all sorts of mental contortions and all the rest of it. But don't forget that the police bill and the rest of it had brought in kind of long old punishments, criminal punishments for defacing statues. It's not just normal criminal damage, it's special type of criminal damage now.
Oh, and eggs aren't illegal though, are they?
Well, no, I think I'm talking about if something, you know, more happens, if people try to
spray paint it, yeah.
or spray paint it, exactly. I think that the argument here is not should, you know, Britain's first female prime minister have a statue somewhere. She's already got a statue in Parliament and all the rest of it. I think the argument from one person I spoke to locally, one councillor, was sure, you know, it's outside the museum in Grantham, which has a lot about Thatcher. Why not put it in the museum with a sort of board explaining why some people liked her and why some people thought that she was, you know, the worst prime minister we've had and destroyed communities and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Took Britain in a rightwards direction. And that way you can have the debate alongside the statue. The problem that a lot of people have with statues, and I know this isn't ending on the good news, I'm really sorry, I've just gone on a ramble, is that they are put up often with very little context, and they seem like a sort of peon, homage to the person, which they are, you know. With
that is the point of them. They're not there to debate whether or not they're right or wrong. And it's worth bearing in mind that when that statue of Edward Colston went up in Bristol in Victorian times, it was also incredibly unpopular, and it was unpopular for many years, which is why it eventually went for a swim, because the council wouldn't take it down or do anything much about it. Now, Pamela says, I don't think the statue will be a tourist hotspot like the local Tory council are hoping for. No, Pamela, I think it's going to be a urinal pretty rapidly.
I fancy I could pitch to the news desk a nice day trip to Grantham, day out of Westminster, go and ask questions.
See how many people have peed on it so far. I suspect there'll be one or two. But if it was in a museum, no one's peeing on it. You can have some security to make sure no one's going in there with a can of spray paint. Like you say, you can have the debate. And if someone did want to still go in, I think wasn't there one in Westminster or somewhere once where someone took in a sledgehammer and did a statue of someone they didn't like. Was it Thatcher? It was it Thatcher in Parliament?
God,
it took a hammer to her.
You've tested my memory now. I know there's one statue.
Googling it.
There's one statue of where it's still here actually, where the spur on the back of his boot is chipped off because when the suffragettes came into Parliament, they essentially chained themselves to the statue and it damaged the statue, which is a good piece of history about how statues take on the times that they're in. But I can't remember the one that you're talking about.
No, I can remember something hit one with a hammer. There's one at the BBC a little while ago hit with a hammer, but I can't find the one that I could swear there was someone with a sledgehammer went for something once. I think it was a Thatcher one somewhere, but I can't recall. But Mike says, if Dan goes to Grantham, I'll pay for the eggs. Dan won't be throwing any eggs, Mike. How dare you? But interestingly, if we can just have a look at that page again, what I think is really bad, and I say this despite the fact that obviously our editor has chosen to use this photograph, the picture of the statue being lowered into place there that looks like she's got a noose around her neck and is being hung from a tree, I think that kind of image is probably far worse than, in terms of safety of politicians and so on, it's probably far worse than egging a statue.
Yeah, I don't know how else you lower a statue into place. I've no idea, but
but that's the thing. I think that should have been done in darkness.
How years of planning went into this, and that didn't come up. I mean,
we've taken that picture.
So, having taken the definition of good news to its absolute logical limit.
It's good news for the government's culture wars because lefties are no longer throwing statues in the river. There you go. That's why it's good news. And price of eggs has gone up so far, as William has said, that they won't be able to afford to throw many eggs for much longer. So
let's be honest, we just wanted to talk about the Thatcher statue.
We just wanted to talk about the Thatcher statue. It was more interesting than anything else, and it was in the paper. Right, okay. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. I have a feeling that the left-wing mobs are going to be relocating to the East Midlands fairly soon. Never mind the fact that they didn't want to put the statue in Westminster. I think they're going to find themselves in Lincolnshire pretty rapid.